We're just ordinary people living ordinary lives until we see someone on TV win a $25,000 prize. Come on down. I'll play any game for 10 seconds of fame. Come on down. I'll make a deal, just let me spin the wheel. Come on down. To win $1 million, all you need is a little luck and thorough knowledge of multiple disparate trivial subjects.
All right, welcome to another episode of Come On Down, voted America's favorite game show podcast by males 18 to 35 in this room, hosted by me, John Baker.
And me, Jonathan Montney.
All right, today's episode, we're going to talk about a game show.
What? Dare you to talk about this game.
Oh, I see what you're doing there. Double Dare is... hold on. I double dare you to talk about this game.
Okay, physical challenge.
We don't know. This is a podcast. That's not going to work very well.
Dang it.
So the game we're talking about today is Double Dare. It was a Nickelodeon game show in the late 80s, early 90s for the most part. It ran from...
June 1986, which, do you know what special year and month that is?
Oh, Ronald Reagan was just signing some laws.
Oh, my birthday, dude.
You were born then. Congratulations.
Double Dare and I share the same birthday.
You're a Double Dare baby. Really famously, actually, a lot of parents conceived during the Double Dare time period. There was a big Double Dare related baby boom.
Yeah. Because they saw kids playing and they're like, oh my God, that looks awesome. I would love to have a kid.
Exactly. So Double Dare started in 1986 on Nickelodeon. It was the first Nickelodeon game show. It was one of the very first game shows targeted specifically at kids as participants.
And the only two things that were targeting kids at that time were cigarette ads and Double Dare.
So this really solved the nation's cigarette problem, child cigarette problem. That's why in Vietnam, they didn't have Double Dare, so that's why you still see kids driving around on motorcycles smoking cigarettes to this day. You've seen those?
Yeah. The coolest kids I've ever seen.
Well, obviously, they're very cool. The Double Dare, why America is lame as fuck now. Sorry about that. I was in a bad position. I had to adjust my chair. Anyway, so Double Dare started out in 1986 on Nickelodeon. It was the early days of the Nickelodeon channel, and this kind of helped kick off its popularity. It was being filmed originally in Philadelphia, actually, which I found kind of weird. I guess kind of associating Nickelodeon with Universal Studios.
Yeah.
And it was hosted by a guy named Marc Summers.
M-A-R-C.
It's Mark with a C, so, he's a little suspicious right off the bat.
I don't trust a Mark with a C.
But it turns out he's a pretty good guy. He actually, he auditioned for this show when he was a television warm-up comic at the time. Like, if you've seen Pete Holmes' TV show Crashing on HBO, on semi-autobiographical. On that show, at least, he was a warm-up comic for the Rachel Ray show, I think. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a funny show.
It's a pretty coveted position because it's essentially 9 to 5. It's a pretty steady gig, and it paid pretty well.
Right, and you're doing crowd work for...
Yeah. You're probably making some artistic sacrifices for the...
You're definitely making some artistic sacrifices.
Stuff that you're...
To be a warm-up comic and to be the host of Double Dare if your goal in life is comedian. But not to besmirch Mark with a C Summers' name. He actually was a pretty solid host. So something that I learned, he was 34 at the time the show started, but when they did polls with test audiences, they thought he was in his early 20s.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of the reason why he got the job, was because he seemed young, and of course this is targeting children.
Yeah.
So they didn't want some old fogey hosting the show. They actually originally almost had a deal locked up with Dana Carvey.
Yeah.
To be the host of the show, but this was before SNL. But he got an audition for SNL during the casting process.
Yeah, and then crushed it, I'm assuming.
No, I heard he did terrible.
At his SNL audition? Hold on, he's drinking water.
Yeah, no, I'm sure he did great because he got on the show. But could you imagine if Double Dare was conceived a year earlier, before Dana Carvey had the SNL opportunity?
Yeah.
What would be the butterfly effect of? Because Marc Summers hosted the show through 1993, so 7 years of his life were dedicated to this, and that was basically the entire time that Dana Carvey was on SNL as well. So
no, wasn't that special?
no church lady, no Master of Disguise, critically acclaimed film
Oh yeah.
where he was that weird turtle guy character guy.
What was the other?
And Marc Summers would be on SNL. Marc Summers would be a world famous comedian to this day if Dana Carvey, if the show had started
Is that how the
a year
butterfly
earlier.
effect works? Somebody has to fill that spot.
It's a straight trade.
It's a switcheroo.
Yeah, it's Ashton Kutcher swaps out with.
So Ashton Kutcher lost an arm in that film. Did somebody gain a third arm?
Did he lose an arm?
Yes.
Oh,
dude.
there was a mailbox explosion,
Yeah.
wasn't there? All right, welcome to our Ashton Kutcher film review podcast. Come on down. So yeah, the crazy butterfly effect of Dana Carvey. But yeah, Marc Summers hosted the show. He did a pretty solid job. I will say so basically the premise of the show is there are two teams of two children in the original version competing against one another, and the episode starts with a physical challenge toss up basically. So
Lights on, camera starts, boom. We got
it's
two
going.
teams.
We're
lined
in
up
action.
against each other.
There's been no explanation so far. There are just people hopping in and doing some crazy thing with whipped cream or slime
or gelatin.
something.
Couldn't say Jell-O, by the way.
Well, that's trademarked.
Yeah.
Something that was a physical challenge that generally involved popping balloons or throwing goo at your teammate and having them catch it somehow.
It was a lot of catching stuff. The one I saw was a tiny seesaw situation, and one of the girl had to stomp on the end of it, shoot a marshmallow up into this air, and the kid, the boy, her teammate, had some sort of a stick with a tiny wire catcher, and he had to catch the marshmallow out of thin air.
That seems hard. A marshmallow doesn't have much
three
weight
times.
to it. He nailed it?
Nailed it.
Wow. Congratulations to them. I bet you that kid's a environmental lawyer today. But that was how the game started, and that gave you control of the board. Whoever was the first to catch 3 marshmallows on a stick or whatever the challenge of the day was got $25 and control of the board, basically.
$25?
I mean,
Which to us is nothing, but to a kid...
Because we're loaded, just to be clear.
Dude, I have $25 in my checking account right now.
Not a problem.
Not a single penny more.
But yeah, it's a lot of money to a kid. But I guess they're splitting it up. They split up the prize purse at the end between the two of them. But yeah, so you get control of the board.
What's half of 25?
12.5.
Guys, this mental math is insane.
Thank you. So yeah, that's basically how the show worked. You got control of the board, and then there were trivia questions. And Marc Summers would ask the trivia question to the team, and if they didn't know the answer, they could dare the other team. And now the other team has to answer the question for twice the money.
Yeah.
And if they miss it, the original team who was asked the question gets that amount of money.
Yeah.
And then if they didn't know, they could double dare it back to the original team. Again, doubling the value of the money. So they could either now answer the question if they had an epiphany in the meantime.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that. What is the point of giving them an option to answer the question or do what you're about to say, the physical challenge?
So it's interesting that you bring that up because, yes,
It made
their
me
option
so
is to
upset.
answer the question or do the physical challenge for that amount of money. And if they can complete the physical challenge in the allotted amount of time, 15 or 30 seconds or whatever it was, they were awarded the money and continued control of the board. Otherwise, again, they missed it. The other team got the money and control of the board. It's interesting you say that because I did see a couple times where, I don't know, some nerds were confident that they knew the answer and the other team didn't. So they dared them, got double dared back, and then answered the question
That is
and got
sneaky,
the money.
but smart.
Yeah.
Risky, wow.
But...
So in that instance, it is strategy to dare, hopefully get the double dare back to you and then answer it.
There's the strategy of the game right there.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah. But so that's more or less how the entire game worked. There was a first round that ended after a certain time limit. A buzzer went off and they went to a commercial break. Mm-hmm. We came back with another physical competition for control of the board. And then we went through the second round with the exact same setup as round one. At the end of the show, again, a buzzer went off, signifying time was up, and the team with the most money at that point in time was the winner.
Yeah.
And that team then went on to the obstacle course, which in the 2000 reboot was properly renamed the Slopsticle course because it was generally just a bunch of 8 messy things that you had to do to alternating between the two people.
Yeah.
To find a flag and pass it to the next person before they went on to the next thing. So it was like
a relay race.
Slide down this slide into gelatin where you can find a flag encased in gelatin, rip it out, hand it to your teammate, and tell them what they've won. Yeah. And so for each obstacle that you completed in the obstacle course, each of you got whatever elevated prize there was.
Which we need to talk about the prizes.
There were some good ones.
There were... See, my point is some of them seemed like terrible children's prizes. In the episode that I watched, one of the prizes was a stereo, hair curlers, and blue jeans.
So stuff that your aunt would get you for Christmas.
Yeah.
And you went,
like one of them
thanks.
was the $250 gift card to Toys R Us.
Yeah, I saw a $1,000 KB Toys gift card for one
Wow.
of them. I thought that was pretty baller.
It seemed to alternate for me. It was like, one of them was Atari. Sweet, awesome. I would love that. And blue jeans. And you're like,
yeah. So, but I mean, if you got all 8, there was generally a vacation that you got if you were able to get all 8. Whether it was a trip to Disney World or Space Camp was another big one on there, which is in Alabama, which
is in Philadelphia.
Which is in Philadelphia. So that's the great thing about it. But space is cool. Space was even cooler then, I think, to kids. I don't know if kids think space is cool anymore.
I bet they do now that SpaceX is launching.
Now that space is back. Space is back
Space
on the
is back,
agenda.
baby.
Hell yeah. We're going to Huntsville.
What was your did you see anybody win the 8 courses? Because I only watched about 4 or 5 episodes, but I didn't see a single team win.
Yeah, I did.
Wow,
so
okay.
so they've got 60 seconds to complete these 8 things. It is a challenge. Usually they get up to about 7 or 8 in the time limit. Some of them, I feel like some of these kids, I don't see the urgency from them. They were really pathetic performers, to be honest with you. I'm really lackadaisical, a tenuous grasp of the rules in general. They're not passing the flags when they need to. You got to dive into this gigantic pie. You've got to stick your...
Which they scream feet first because they had some pretty serious legal issues right off the bat.
You've got to stick your hand up the giant nose booger canal to get that flag. You got to commit. And especially in these early episodes from 86 to 93, again, it was in Philadelphia. It later moved to Orlando during that run to Universal Studios.
That makes more sense.
And so I guess because they're not working with kids who want to be actors for the most part, they had some really uncharismatic, shitty kids on this show.
Yeah.
No offense to these kids, but they were terrible idiots.
Yeah, I felt bad for Mark because
trying to get anything out of them with a little bit of banter.
Dead-eyed kids are like, small talk already is so difficult. Forced small talk on a show like this
with a 9-year-old that's shy with a camera in their face.
Yeah. Like he was like, I remember he was talking to one girl and he was like, so, yeah, you're from, you like to dance, you're a ballerina? And she's like, yeah. So, okay. Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? Tell the cameras. And she just looked at me. He's like, what did we talk about in the green room? What do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh,
she was
no.
like, ballerina. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I watched one where there was this girl and he said, oh, so I understand your nickname is Minnie. What's the story behind that? And she goes, well, my friends and I were coming up with nicknames, and I had a mini shirt on. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he's introducing the other team, and there's this guy, and he goes, and I understand you've got a nickname too. They call you Meatball, right? Why is that? And he goes, I don't know. Like, did they not prepare for this at all? I assumed they had these facts because they'd be like, yeah, why don't you, discuss about that time that you were eating raw meatballs and people were making fun of you for it or whatever. But there was a lot of awkward interactions like that, which you saw less of in. So there was a recent 2018, 2019 reboot of it that was all kids again. That it was now. We've got the YouTube generation. We've got the, Disney Channel star generation. These kids were performing from start to finish. They were hamming it up to high heaven. It was completely different than the kids you saw in the 80s and early 90s version.
Which looks cheesy, but to me, a kid overacting is better than the awkwardness of a kid that has no
boring,
charisma.
Exactly. I totally agree. And I mean, they clearly could tell what was working and what wasn't working over time. So as the show progressed, they started a syndicated version called Super Sloppy Double Dare. And it was just more messy, more whipped cream, more gunk, more slime. Slime was a big thing on Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean,
and
it was
porn.
Kind of in their look.
It kind of at the same time.
This is a family show. It was green on Nickelodeon.
And also in porn.
So slime was a big thing on Nickelodeon. It actually started in another show in the early 80s called You Can't Do That on Television, which was kind of a kids variety show, almost like All That, but earlier and not quite to that extent.
Was it like kids SNL or more?
A little bit like kids SNL. It was kind of trying to ride that wave of the late 70s, early 80s. And in that show, whenever any of the actors said, I don't know, they got slimed. So that was where slime originated from. It became huge. People loved it, so they were sliming people in every episode of that show.
Yeah.
And it carried over into all these game shows. It carried over into Double Dare, obviously, and everything else. Did you know that I have been slimed?
Like
in the Double Dare kind of way, just to be clear, going back to what we were talking about a couple minutes ago.
Okay, tell us
way.
the story of that.
So basically, my family was in Universal Studios, Nickelodeon Studios, Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, which is how they would eventually sign off.
To travel.
Cool. What was that?
Your family had money to travel.
We've got $25. So we were doing. They had some sort of, I guess, kind of backlot tour of Nickelodeon Studios, more or less, and you would kind of walk through and there's the set of All That or whatever where they
was Amanda Bynes doing cocaine on the set of All That.
Oh yeah, of course. She was doing porn on the set of All That.
This is a family show, dude.
I'm sorry. So you did this backlot tour, and then they took you to an area where they kind of had these obstacles and things set up, and they would choose from the crowd of people, volunteer kids to do these certain things, and I was really excited about the opportunity to be slimed.
I bet while you're doing this, your parents are like, God damn it, we're gonna have to fucking clean his ass off after this.
They gave me a t-shirt afterwards. They gave me a t-shirt to change into.
Yeah.
And it said I got slimed on it. It was a very a prized possession of mine when I was 4'3" and I had an extra large t-shirt that said I got slimed. But so I got slimed. It was one of the highlights of my youth.
What happened? Did they ask you a question, you got it wrong, or they were just like, stand here,
It was
slime
basically just like,
next?
stand here and we're going to slime you. And
Okay.
the big bucket of slime got dumped on me, more or less. So I knew exactly what I was in for. It was very applesaucy. I remember.
So like kind of chunky?
It was a little bit chunky. It was thinner than applesauce, but it tasted a whole hell of a lot like
You
applesauce.
let it go into your mouth.
I wanted the full experience.
God.
You never know when you're going to get
You're
slimed in
nasty,
real life.
dude.
I also, I had to prepare myself because, again, there could be several situations in life where slime might come into play.
And you need to taste it.
And I needed to taste it to make sure that it wasn't something that was going to be a problem.
Right.
Tasted pretty applesaucy. Wasn't bad. I'm going to be honest with you. So that was, I got slimed. It is a big accomplishment in my life. But I was not on Double Dare, which is a big failure of my life. Because
I would say more of a failure than the win of getting a slime.
You know what? I don't think we need to compare the two. I think that I'm very proud of my slime situation.
Slime situation.
And I do find myself crying myself to sleep at night from time to time about the lack of Double Dare participation. But anyway.
Oh, dude, that sucks.
There was the super sloppy Double Dare. And then on Fox, they started airing a weekly family Double Dare in like 1988.
That was the first episode I watched, was a family Double Dare.
Yeah. So family Double Dare, I think they realized they could avoid some of the problems of the completely boring ass kids by having adults there to interact with. And you know, it probably gives a little bit of safety net to the kids to make them a little bit more comfortable with their parents being there instead of just them being on the stage under the bright lights on their own.
It had to be a liability issue too. It's probably a lot easier to just have the parents sign one piece of paper.
Probably to some extent.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I felt like watching the family Double Dare, which all of Double Dare ended up eventually transitioning into family Double Dare.
Yeah. It was much easier to find a family Double Dare episode.
Yeah. And so my problem with it is when it became family Double Dare, the questions didn't change. So they were
still like kid oriented?
Yeah. It was still kind of fourth grade knowledge questions.
Yeah.
And they would ask the question and they would do a little huddle thing. And a kid would give the answer that their parents told them because the parents knew the answer to every question. There was a lot less daring and double daring. I felt like when there was a dare or a double dare, it was because the question before would be like, H2O is the chemical formula for what? And they'd be like, water. And then the next question would be like, in 1956, who was the prime minister of Yugoslavia? And I was like, okay, they just won a physical challenge at this point because nobody's going to know this question.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wrote down some of the questions and because of exactly what you just said. So mine was actually from an actual kid Double Dare. So this wasn't family, but
okay,
still.
This was just the two on two, kid on kid.
Yeah. So Team Giggles.
Oh yeah, and you had a team name. That was the other big thing. I'm very sorry I forgot to mention this earlier.
Leave. Just leave.
All right.
All right.
It's been fun.
Team Giggles, their question was, how many species of ants are there?
Impossible.
Well, no, it was like 36 or something like that. Or right. 23, I think.
Impossible.
They answered 36 and they were wrong.
Why would they bother answering?
The Knights I don't know. The girl on that team was very confident. And so she said it confidently. And I was like, damn, she knew that.
I've counted them.
That's wrong. The Knights question, the very next question, what date is Halloween?
What day does Halloween? Did they not even complete the sentence?
What date is Halloween? Okay. And then they crushed it, obviously.
Obviously, 26.
Yes. Well, it's their 31st, dude.
Oh, yes.
You would have lost children's Double Dare.
What?
The very next question. What did Dumbo have to hold in his trunk to fly?
Feather.
Correct.
Thank you.
So, and they had 3 or 4 others that rattled off that were super easy. And this team, you could see this team across the way just like,
come on.
What the heck?
Can we have any of these questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was, the questions were kind of a crapshoot in that way. Like I said, it all got transitioned back into Family Double Dare. But again, this was a huge hit for Nickelodeon. This kind of helped kick off Nickelodeon as a force. In 1988, half of Nickelodeon's profit came from Double Dare.
Yes.
Half of the entire television network's profit came from this one show.
One show.
And I mean, the ease of it was like every single day or every single weekday in the afternoon when kids are just getting home from school and they just tuned in Nickelodeon and watched Double Dare. And it worked real well. To the point where they were trying to do an adult version. They got the person at the time known as Bruce Jenner to host.
Who's that? Caitlyn Jenner's brother?
Caitlyn Jenner, the former Caitlyn Jenner, to host the adult Double Dare, and they did a pilot of it. They had a celebrity version with Scott Baio.
Okay.
In the pilot, and I guess it was not well received. I don't know if they didn't make the questions hard enough, or it just
it was
not,
the same children,
or if it's not entertaining
questions.
to watch Scott Baio pick a giant nose to find a flag. But it never ended up airing.
It's more of a fisting of a nose than picking if you got a big old adult arm.
Yeah, I mean it was a big schnoz that you had to.
It was a pretty big schnoz.
Rip through there. But yeah, so the show finally ended up going off the air in 1993 after 7 million episodes or something along those lines. Marc Summers went on to do other great things.
What?
He had an What Would You Do? Wasn't that the other Nickelodeon game show that he hosted? He eventually, I think he hosted a History Channel game show called History IQ. Somewhat recently, like within the last decade or so. I think he still does things like that. He's still involved in Double Dare. They'll do one-offs or live tours or things like that.
They did do a lot of touring. That's right. They had like a live tour.
Yeah, and he actually. So I want to read a sentence to you from his Wikipedia page.
Okay.
He also had a rare dramatic performance in the Nickelodeon-produced Halloween program Mystery Magical Special, which also highlighted his skills as a stage magician.
So he was also a magician.
Yeah, he had, or at least he had the skills of one.
What does that mean?
Magic. He knew magic.
He knew magic.
Yes. I don't know if he still does, but at one point in time, for the Mystery Magical Special on Nickelodeon, in a rare dramatic turn for Marc Summers, he was a dramatic stage magician, it turns out.
Which almost all of them are.
If anybody can track down the Mystery Magical Special, let us know and we will do a review of it.
Wow.
Maybe. But anyway, so, and then in the year 2000, Double Dare came back with a vengeance.
Oh, really?
And it was called Double Dare 2000, which is fitting, I guess.
Double Dare 2000 Splooge Master Supreme.
Nope. It was called Double Dare 2000. Sure? Huh. And this time, Marc Summers, I guess, at this point, he was in his late 40s.
So he was done with his magic phase.
His magic genes had worn off.
Okay.
And he was probably perceived as too old to be the host of it still. Because,
how dare you?
Again, they liked him because they could pretend he was 22 when he was 34.
Yeah.
So they got a new host for this one, and his name was Jason Harris. And he looked like
boring name.
A Walmart version of Corey Matthews from Boy Meets World.
I'm gonna look this up.
And he dressed down, which I thought was interesting. That was different from the first one. Marc Summers always wore a suit jacket and
sport coat,
tie, and this Jason Harris dressed like a guy from 2000 that was trying to be cool. He would wear a t-shirt with a short sleeve unbuttoned button down over the top of it.
He was a man of the people.
Probably had some puka shells on. But that was the big change in Double Dare 2000. It was again the family Double Dare format. And this is where they rightly changed the name of the obstacle course to the Slopsticle course because it was sloppy. And that way you didn't have to call it Super Sloppy Double Dare, which just sounds weird.
Yeah.
But you still get the slop somewhere in the branding with the Slopsticle course. This also introduced the Triple Dare Challenge.
Okay, what's that?
So if you got Double Dared and took the physical challenge, you could add a modifier that made your physical challenge harder, but
so like charisma +3.
Yes, it was Dungeons and Dragons related modifiers. It would basically be you have 5 seconds less, or you have to do this additional task as well in the time limit, or things along those lines. And you could accept the Triple Dare Challenge, and you got more money if you completed it. But if you missed it, the other team did. Dang. So it was quite risky. It was kind of something that might be a desperation move if you are trailing quite a bit at the end.
Yeah.
Which, again, is also a reason why you might strategically dare somebody hoping to get double dared back because you're behind and you need to make up ground. Even if it is, you want to take the physical challenge to have the opportunity. The problem is, again, this is all time based. So if you take a physical challenge, it's eating up a lot of the game's time. Speaking of, one of my main criticisms of this show in all versions is that the obstacle course / slopsicle course portion, each section of it is broken down and described every single episode.
Yes.
And then they tell you what prize you get for completing that portion.
Right.
So almost half of the running time of the show was them describing what these obstacles are and what prizes you could win from their paid promoters, more or less, which was a lot of paid promoters was the other thing. This is, again,
8 options.
A giant 22-minute advertisement with 8 minutes of actual advertisements also running amidst it.
Yeah.
Because all of the prizes were LA Lights, the light up shoe that you can count on to light things up and not get murdered when you're out at night.
There's no way that's
LA
the actual
Lights.
tagline. There's no way.
That they changed it after some focus
look
group
it up.
studies, but originally that was the LA Lights tagline.
LA Lights, the ultimate shoe to help you light up at night and not get murdered.
See? Thank you.
That was the actual tagline?
That was the tagline.
Oh my gosh.
So Double Dare 2000, like I said, it was pretty much exactly the same. Going back and watching these, I feel like I remember Double Dare 2000 being kind of a part of my youth, something that I would come home from school and turn on and watch this a lot, like for an extended period of my life.
Yeah.
It literally only ran in the year 2000 and then was canceled and didn't run anymore. But I feel like I remember I remember all those days when I would always come home after school and watch Double Dare 2000. But I mean, it was literally only in the year 2000.
Yeah.
It was for that 1 year. So I remember it for that 1 year, and I've extrapolated that over several years of my life, I guess. Also, again, to go back to some criticisms of this show, the original version of it, from the perspective of an adult man in the year 2020, was pretty awful. Like we said, there were a lot of uncharismatic children. They didn't really bring a lot to the table here.
Yeah.
The set looked just so cheap and crappy.
Dude, they would have people... When I was watching this, and I was a little biased because I did read about how scrappy this was, they only had $10,000 budget per episode.
That's not surprising to me. And because, again, they would pan the crowd, and it was just like 6 chairs of kids next to them. But they'd be super zoomed in, so they're not showing that there's nothing behind them. So, I mean, yeah, you could tell that it was pretty shoestring budgeted. But, again, it was making them a ton of money. So I guess that it kind of grew over time. Like I said, it moved from Philadelphia to Orlando. Double Dare 2000 was in Orlando. And then it disappeared for a while, 18 years, I would guess. But they still did some touring shows and things like that. They would do them in malls and things. Double Dare would pop up in your
the old
mall.
Mall shows.
Exactly. And then in 2018, they brought it back to TV with Liza Koshy.
Who's that?
As the host now.
Who's that?
You're unfamiliar with Liza Koshy?
Nope.
So she was a Vine person. She got famous from doing Vine, and then later YouTube because Vine got shut down. So she, like I said, this is the YouTube generation of kids. This is a person that they can relate to, that I'm sure they watched whatever videos she did on YouTube. And this version was a lot more, again, geared towards this current generation, which makes sense. There was a lot of people doing Fortnite dances between challenges and things like that. I felt like she tried to relate to the kids a lot more than in either of the other 2 previous versions.
Yeah.
Where Marc Summers and our boy Jason Harris were, again, kind of typical game show hosts. They would have the little banter, why is your nickname Meatball?
Yeah.
But they would just kind of lay out the rules and ask the questions, whereas Liza Koshy is joining in on their dances and getting goofy with them and having a little bit more fun with it.
Yeah.
And also Marc Summers was involved in this version as the announcer.
Okay.
So I think he kind of was the rules guy of the show.
Yeah.
And she was the fun person who also asked the questions.
Yeah. So this Liza chick dated David Dobrik.
Who's that?
Oh my God, you're so fucking old, dude.
I'm sorry.
David Dobrik is
it another
probably
YouTube
one
guy?
of the most popular YouTube people. He also started on Vine, and then he has a huge following of people.
Everybody started on Vine. So I call all these people YouTube people, just completely not
It's
acknowledging the
YouTubers.
fact
Just say
that we are.
YouTubers, because that's how you say
I'm
it
sorry,
when you're not 40.
YouTubers. Why don't we call them tubers? I think that would be cooler. Tubers.
Hey, tubes, dude.
What up? Here's my tubes. Pass the dubes, tubes. God, I probably sound really old and out of touch. But also, we're posting all of these episodes on YouTube as I
What's YouTube? Oh,
I
dude.
completely degrade the content. Well, I'm not
I
trying
wish
to
we could
degrade
post
them,
these on
but
MySpace. To be totally honest with you,
We might. It's in for a comeback. It's going to get rebooted, just like everything else. By the way, so how do you? This was rebooted in 2000. It was rebooted in 2018. It ran for 2 seasons from 2018 to 19.
Mm-hmm.
In general, how do you feel about reboots?
well,
I mean,
I
it could
think
be
that they're
game
always
shows, it could
trying
be
to
TV shows,
recapture-
movies.
here's the thing. We are at the age now where we're starting to see, we've been seeing quite a few reboots of stuff that we watched as kids. What's the new Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures coming out soon. I have yet to see a really good reboot. Here's one that comes to mind, just thinking of it. A reboot that came out that I thought came pretty close to living up to the original. I think the Jurassic Park movies.
The
all-
Chris Pratt Jurassic Parks.
Yeah. I think they're pretty good. I don't think that they're groundbreaking like the first ones were, but I think they're enjoyable. I think it's a
Right.
pretty good story. I have yet to see a reboot that comes out that's like, oh, that's awesome. But I don't know if that is an objective opinion because I've gotten the nostalgia flooding in
Right.
from all these. Have we talked about Page Master? We haven't talked about Page Master yet.
I don't think we've talked about Page Master.
Page
yet.
Master was a movie with Macaulay Culkin, and he got sucked into a book in a library and
And it
has an
became
adventure.
animated.
Yes, and I thought it was awesome. I thought it was great.
Phenomenal movie.
The only thing I remembered of this movie was there was a broken construction sign, like the tents that they put up,
Right.
and he had to jump over something, and he used that as a ramp. I don't know why, but that stuck with me. Probably because I was also really active and cool around that age. So
So it's obviously not that reason. But there might have been another reason.
it was definitely that reason. And I rewatched it in college because I think I came across a DVD. It was like in the crap bin at Walmart.
Right, and it was just as great as you remembered.
It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Oh,
So, I mean, what about you? I would say no reboots. In my opinion,
you're anti-reboot.
reboots are great. Now this is going to be ruined because it's a crappier version.
right. So I can understand that point. I've heard that a lot. I feel like people are sick of the reboots, especially Disney doing the live action reboots of their animated shows. I mean, obviously, with something like a game show, I don't think anybody is necessarily anti-reboot because it's just kind of a fun time passing
Yeah.
sort of thing where you're doing trivia challenges or kind of testing your mind in various different ways.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I've heard backlash against the game show reboot.
Sure.
Like you have against some of these other things. I think some of the backlash against the reboot is overblown. And granted, I've got nostalgia goggles. I think back to, oh, that was so great. Things were so great then. I wish I could go back there all the time. But I don't think we are considering the fact that we've always rebooted everything.
Yeah.
It's specifically entertainment wise. Like before, the last 100 years,
Sure.
all music was just folk music that got passed down over time or church music that got passed down over time.
Yeah.
All performance art was plays that
Were
people
made in
performed over
Greek.
and over, exactly,
Yeah.
whether they were passed down word of mouth or written down Shakespeare, things like that. I don't think there are a lot of people that are like, ugh, Fucking Kenneth Branagh doing a Shakespeare thing again. Come up with something original, you hack. I think so. It's funny to me that now we're at the point where I do feel like we have probably the most original content in the history of the world, whether that is YouTube, podcasts, movies, television shows. So
you're saying the large number of platforms and avenues has led to more original content?
Yeah, and just a lower barrier of entry in general.
Yeah.
Before the last 20, 30 years, there was no such thing as making an independent movie because you couldn't possibly afford to do all that. And so now there are so many people that have the capability to tell the stories that they want to tell. And sure, there are stories that people are familiar with that are comforting to them, that they want to see again and again, the same way you listen to the same album again and again, or you go see a concert of the guy whose songs you already know all the words to. In fact, to the point where when they play a new song that you don't know, you're like, what the fuck is this? Play Freebird,
Yeah.
So it's funny to me that we kind of have that perception, but then we're like, oh, what is Disney doing? Remaking The Little Mermaid live action. First of all, The Little Mermaid animated version.
Super hot. Is that what?
No, that's not where I was going.
Okay.
But anyway, reboot, The Little Mermaid animated version, it was just an adaptation of a Hans Christian Andersen story from, I don't know when I wanted to say hundreds of years earlier, but that might not be true. But the point is, it wasn't an original piece of work at the time, and now people are like, how dare you screw with this thing? It's like, well, that was already something that screwed with something else.
Yeah.
There's so much of that out there. I mean, just recently, HBO did the Perry Mason reboot, which was phenomenal. I don't know if you've watched it. So good. I'm not super familiar with the original Perry Mason because it was in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
But again, it was based on books that were written in the 30s. So that at the time was an adaptation of something. And I know a lot of in terms of the movie world, at least, a lot of the big budget stuff goes to things with a proven track record. A lot of the big budget stuff is, well, we can reboot Aladdin because people are going to come watch Aladdin because we know people like Aladdin, which again was a story originally adapted from a thousands of years old thing.
Well, it's just like you have to understand too, when we're talking about especially big budget stuff like Aladdin, or this money is coming, you're essentially gambling, sort of. I mean, it's like it's a calculated risk, but when you're sinking millions of dollars into something,
like we're doing with this podcast, by the way,
do you want a almost guaranteed built-in audience that you're going to recoup your money, or do you want to roll the dice on a completely new story that you have no idea if it's going to be well received or not?
Right. I mean, business-wise, of course, it makes sense. And I even think the detractors realize that business-wise, it makes sense, and business is the reason that they're doing this. And I think people will complain that, oh, they're only doing it for the dollar, they're not doing it for the art. But there is so much good art out there. Quit being whiny babies and go watch something on IFC. Go see whatever new film A24 is putting out. Yeah. Because if that's what's going to appeal to you, it is out there for you.
Yeah.
And not everything needs to be for you 100% of the time. There's so much content that is for everybody. And I am going to go home tonight and I'm going to watch the CGI reboot of Lady and the Tramp on Disney Plus.
Wow.
This episode brought to you by Disney. Reboots Plus. Are great. They're amazing. Watch them all.
Watch them all. Give us your money.
Yeah, so that's kind of my perspective on the whole reboot craze or reboot controversy that we've seen.
Hot take, dude.
Thank you. I am. But I think obviously, like we've said, basically every good game show has gotten rebooted multiple times because it's a formula that works. People will tune in. People are comfortable with it. People are familiar with it.
And if you think about it, it is kind of new content each time.
Right. It's completely
the setting
there are new questions.
Is the same, but you've got new contestants.
Right.
The questions are always different, so it's like a little dose of new each time.
They'll mix up the physical challenges. Obviously, they'll repeat from time to time, but they've got a huge bank of them. The Slopsicle course, they had you know, I don't know, because there were 8 things per. They probably had 30 different ideas, and they would kind of mix and match them and put them together and put them in different orders in the obstacle course, slopsicle course.
One of them was
portion
monumental. It was monkey bars. Do you remember that?
I remember monkey bars?
One of the obstacles.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, do you remember monkey
I do
bars?
remember monkey bars.
Well, it's just like all these were like slide down the chocolate syrup slide and go into the cavern of balloons and then monkey bars.
They've run out of ideas at a certain point, and they need to fill all 8 spots. So, and a lot of the things are quite similar. It will be dig through this thing of goo to find the flag that's shaped like a pie. Dig through this thing of goo that's shaped like a pizza to find the flag.
Totally different.
You know, jump in this pile of goo to find the flag.
Oh, dude, I love the pile of goo obstacle.
Yeah, exactly. So it was somewhat repetitive stuff, and again, the other issue is they've got 60 seconds to potentially do 8 of these things.
Yeah.
So it has to be something that you can do in pretty much 5 seconds.
And pile of goo is one of them.
I always felt like the most unfair one was, and they use this a lot, was the hamster wheel one.
Or where they do the little lever and squish them through. Oh,
no. So there's one of the people has to get in a human-sized hamster wheel and run and spin it.
Yeah.
And then once they've spun it a certain amount of times, there's a flag on a pole that lowers.
Okay.
And then the next person grabs the flag and moves on to their obstacle. But it took like a good 5 seconds of going on it before the lever started falling. And then you've got some 4'0" kid trying to get this thing as it's slowly coming down, and he's jumping, trying to grab it.
Yeah.
That obstacle always took like 10 to 12 seconds of your 60-second allotted time.
Huge.
This is the catch. This is how they get you. This is how they keep people out of space camp. This is why no kids were going to space camp in the 90s. And this is why we canceled the space program.
Yeah. So Elon Musk was a contestant on this Double Dare and made it to the end.
That's
and
his
he went to
origin
space
story.
Camp. Yes.
That's his origin story. No, the origin story is that because of the hamster wheel, he didn't get to go to space camp. So SpaceX is his revenge.
I'm going to do it myself.
That's why he's actually the villain of our story of life. Wow. So final thoughts, Double Dare, all throughout the years, anything that we missed, any opinions on how the show works, how it could work better, what you think?
How could it work better? I would say they needed to figure out a way for cleanup.
It was very messy show with the physical challenges and
in between. I saw multiple instances of kids slipping, and I was like, oh, I can't imagine a producer in the back just like, oh, don't fall.
Well, they had arm or elbow pads and knee pads on these kids for all of these things because they knew.
Yeah. I would say that, and then I think you made a good point. My second point would be bring on some child actors just to have a little more of a... Because it seemed like with the deadness of the vibe between Mark and these kids, you're just waiting for physical challenges because...
Right. There's finally some excitement happening. Something interesting is going on.
Yeah, so those are my 2 things to make it better. I enjoyed the episodes that I watched, but I wouldn't take free time out to be like, oh, I'm going to watch a Double Dare right now.
No? But yeah, I mean, my thoughts are pretty much the same. Like I said, some of the earlier episodes were pretty painful to watch. I feel like they did unlock something with making it Family Double Dare, making it a family show because, again, I guess it's, encouraging from a viewership perspective. You watch with your family, watch with your kids, and so you can one day aspire to be the family on Double Dare. Like I want to get
sloppy with my family, dude.
And super sloppy.
Sorry, super sloppy.
And but again, the questions didn't really scale with that, and so there was some disconnect for me, knowing that the parents are the ones answering all these questions, and then the kid is just yelling out the answer at the end. So there was a little bit of a disconnect there, but it was still a fun show, good for children. Like you noted, I think the current, more modern reboot from a couple of years ago, getting the charismatic kids that are going to ham it up, while I might hate those kids and they annoy me and I never want to be around them, I do think it makes the show more entertaining, especially to kids who are watching other kids like themselves on Nickelodeon shows, on Disney Channel shows, on YouTube and things like that, on the TikTok. But yeah, that is Double Dare, Family Double Dare, super sloppy Double Dare, Double Dare 2000, and Double Dare, because that's just what it was called in 2018.
DD.
It was just called Double Dare again.
Yeah, Double D.
Marc Summers, if you're listening, we love you and respect you, and we think you should have everything that Dana Carvey does today. In another universe, you do. And you should feel happy for that guy.
Yeah.
All right, that was Double Dare on Come On Down, and we will see you guys next week.
Keep it sloppy.
That's our new sign off.